Well, the Dems are in a whole heap of trouble this morning. Last night was the Hawkeye Caucus, and of course I did my pregame show yesterday afternoon. I, like most people, I think, I kind of went along with the consensus that, hey, it looked like Bernie was going to win. Looked like, Joe Biden, I said, hey, if he could somehow pull out an upset victory, I think it would save his campaign and probably would put an end to Bernie. And that if we got the news last night that Bernie did in fact win in Iowa, that of course that momentum would carry over to New Hampshire, which he's going to win anyway, and then potentially gives him a really good shot at taking out Biden in, not South Carolina, but in Nevada. Biden probably would have a weak victory in South Carolina, and then perhaps Bernie would be within striking distance in Nevada, in which point, Biden's not looking very good. But none of that analysis really ended up mattering because the Dems just decided, nope, we're not going to release the vote. We're not going to release the results. The Iowa Caucus, what's that? Didn't happen. Now, their official reasoning as to why, those of us who stayed up last night until midnight didn't get any results, is that out of an abundance of caution, they want to go over everything and make sure that this vote count that they've taken really is the real vote. Now apparently they had some troubles with their app that they tried to use. I guess they tried to techify the Iowa caucuses, which have been going on for many decades without technology and been doing just fine. They go off without a hitch. But then now all of a sudden the Dems decide to F it up by creating this app, which people are blaming on Robbie Mook, who was Hillary's campaign director, but Robbie Mook comes out and says, I have no affiliation with it, don't blame me, I don't know who did it. Everyone is passing the buck on this one. You have the Iowa chairman of the Democratic Party out there on CBS yesterday with Major Garrett in the morning, and he was saying, hey, you guys ready for this? You worried about any technical difficulties? And he said, oh no, this is the most we've ever prepared for any caucus ever in any year. And of course, the elitist pundits way off in Washington, D.C., what are they blaming this on? Are they blaming this on the Iowa Democratic Party being incompetent? Are they blaming this on the Democratic Party, the DNC, wanting to hold back the results because they're afraid of who might have won? No. They're blaming the Iowa caucus itself, saying that this is a backwards, old-fashioned tradition that needs to die, just like every other tradition, and it needs to be replaced with, a popular primary vote. And of course, these are the same people who say, we have to get rid of the Electoral College because it's so terrible and bad, and tradition is heresy, and so people are just using this as an opportunity to trash the caucus system, which again did not break here. It was the execution by the Democratic Party, which they would do anything, I guess, other than blame themselves. And of course, it's just like these pundits in D.C. to think that it's their right to dictate how people in Iowa decide who they want to nominate for president. Disgusting swine aren't happy unless they dominate every square inch of this country, and then after that every square inch of this world, which is, of course, demonstrated by their foreign policy. Now, since we don't have official results, if anecdotal evidence is any indication, it seems like Biden has no chance of winning last night. I tuned into a couple channels for a few minutes, and the caucuses they were at, Biden didn't even meet the initial viability threshold, which means that essentially his supporters would have had to split off and go into other groups to try and support other candidates if they wanted their vote to count for something. Now, something interesting that somebody brought up about the last time that there was an Iowa caucus for the Democrats back in 2016 is this phenomenon of how in the caucuses, when there is a tie between two candidates, at the caucus they have the same number of people in each camp, they break the tie by flipping a coin. Because, of course, who doesn't love a good old coin toss? And back in 2016, it was so close that these coin tosses actually decided the race. There were 6 coin tosses, of caucus, where there was a tie between Bernie and Hillary won all 6 of them. Which is quite interesting. And we got the results on that night. You would think that, perhaps out of an abundance of caution, the DNC would have withheld those results until they could vet those coin tosses to make sure that there wasn't any funny business going on. Because, what are the odds of that? I mean, it's like 0.5 to the 6th power, I guess. That's astronomically small. I believe the odds of that are like 1.5%. But this year, however, on the year in which it looks like Bernie Sanders probably won, they do feel like they need to hold back these results and make sure they do, 15 different recounts and make sure that, hey, can we throw out any of these Bernie votes because the signature just doesn't quite match? And I saw somebody on Twitter made a pretty good joke about, you see, the Democrats had to put off announcing the results because they just found a whole truckload of ballots down in Broward County, which is a pretty funny old reference back to 2018 and that debacle. Now, thankfully, the Bernie supporters seem to be quite hip to the possibility that the DNC is trying to steal the election from them, and they understand that the DNC is their enemy. In fact, I saw a pretty good interview with one of the Bernie guys on Tucker Carlson's show last night, in which he made it pretty clear that, hey, the Democratic Party is our enemy. Either the Democratic Party will disappear and fade into the mists of history, or we will take it over and completely change it into something that it's not. Now, Bernie himself and his campaign don't seem to be too hip to what's going on, because they last night, from what I've been seeing on Twitter, the people who were up on stage were expressly told, don't say anything about the DNC potentially rigging things, don't say anything about that would make the party look bad, just be good party loyalists, be good party men. Which is, pretty gross, considering, how Bernie's been treated. He should, try and, show some righteous indignation here. He didn't go out and give a speech about how, look, they're holding back the results, they're trying to rig it, they're trying to steal this from you, which is what he should have done politically. But I guess Bernie's just not a demagogue. He really doesn't seem to have it in him, even though, he is supposed to be leading a revolution against the billionaires. Go and chop their heads off and take all their money. Behead the bankers and castrate the cigarette executives. I couldn't think of something to go with C. But anyway, if Bernie does end up losing this after last night, he's going to look like a total chump for not having out and called out. And perhaps he's waiting to see what the results are, and if the results are not in his favor, he will call it out. But the smart thing is to call it out now, say they're trying to steal the election, and then when the results come in and it turns out Bernie won anyway, he can declare victory again and say, see, they were going to change the results, but then I called them out, so they stopped doing it. And he could very rightly cite 2016 and those 6 coin tosses, the 1.5% chance that Hillary won, and she did. But he's decided to be tame, unlike his opponents, apparently. Biden has come out, and I guess they're kind of, to use a millennial term, throwing a bit of shade, so to speak, onto these results and saying that they don't think that this is going to be accurate, which is pretty smart since, he seems to have done terribly there. And again, we don't know the results yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if he came in 4th. Like I said, I've been hearing a lot of reports about how he was not viable in a bunch of precincts. That's not a good sign. And if anybody knows how to lose the Iowa caucus, it's Joe Biden, because I believe he's lost, this would be his 3rd time losing Iowa. That probably will set a new record. Now, old Mayor Pete Buttigieg, he's come out and he's declared victory. He said, hey, this was our night. We did it. Hooray. Which, frankly, is probably what Bernie should have done, I think. Old Pete, though, is coming out and trying to set expectations high. And this has the Bernie people wondering what Pete knows that they don't. Perhaps Pete understands that this is the conspiracy theory now, and I don't mean to deride them, but this is the idea that old Pete knows what the Dems are doing. The Dems are holding back the results so that they can try and rig it in favor of Pete, because it turns out that Biden, was such a failure. They have to recover somehow, and so they'll have to, take a bunch of the results and create a bunch of fake ballots for Pete. And then miraculously, he'll have a comeback win in Iowa, and Iowa will have made Pete Buttigieg the comeback kid, just like old Bill Clinton. Because what is Buttigieg if not a younger, less pervy Joe Biden? And it also appears that he has some ties to the company that actually did produce this app, unlike Robbie Mook. So people are, of course, making a lot of hay about that, saying, oh, here's more evidence. They programmed the app specifically so that Pete could win, no matter what you put in. If you put in a vote for Bernie is a vote for Pete. Now, I'm not going to go that far and say a bunch of crap, but I think the Bernie people certainly have a very good reason to be skeptical of all this. And if things do not go their way, I wouldn't necessarily take that as a sign of a rejection by voters. So until we get the official results, I guess I'll end it here for today. If you gain anything of value out of this video, I'd appreciate you clicking that like button and sharing this video. If you haven't already, please do subscribe because I do upload every day and I'd hate to have you miss one. So I'll see you folks back here tomorrow.